365 Sports on a Monday following yet another full weekend of college football and more games, of course, coming up this weekend. There's still many of the performances and even the better wins and also tougher losses to get to. Gary Barnett, former Northwestern and Colorado football coach, Colorado Radio, joins us. He's been with us before. Great to have Coach Barnett on the show today. Coach, thank you very much for your time. How important was it with what you saw with Colorado bouncing back from Lincoln and basically taking care of business in what is an emotional game against Colorado State?
Well, that was a must-win game for us. After what happened in Lincoln, and I got to tell you, I've been in Lincoln a lot of times, and I've never seen them as fired up as they were. That crowd just took our kids out of it right away, and they weren't ready for that, and so we were stunned. I think, even though we recovered, we got knocked out, almost out, and we sort of recovered and played the second half decently. It was 10-0 us in the second half, but by that time all the damage was done. But we really needed a win, and last year's game with Colorado State was, we had to go 98 yards with 2 minutes left to score a touchdown and get a 2-point conversion just to get to overtime. So we knew that that team, first of all, they were stunned to have lost that game. And then, it's a little bit of a bitter rivalry here in the state. It's a little bit more them towards us than us towards them, but it didn't make any difference. We were playing at their place. So it was a much needed win. It wasn't beautiful, but it was pretty doggone good.
Coach, how many players have you seen in your life that, at the college level at least, live on the level that Travis Hunter is on right now?
None. I've never seen like Travis Hunter, and I've told everybody that. He's the best football player I've ever seen, a skill player. He's and it's funny because when they had their first spring practices, they didn't have numbers on any of their players, and so I was getting the video, watching practice, and there was one guy I knew who Travis Hunter was. He didn't need a number, and then when I saw him in person and watched him, I've just never seen anybody in practice and everything. I've never seen anybody have the body control, the competitiveness, the intuition, the instincts, the speed, all of the hands. He's just got this drive about him that when the ball goes up in the air, it's his, whether he's on offense or defense. And I've never seen anybody like him, that's for sure. And the fact that he's going both ways, that's a big bonus for Colorado to have the best two players in the game on their team. So he's sensational. He really is. Not from this planet.
Coach, there's times, especially in those first couple games, it felt like we were watching a very similar team to last year, maybe slightly better in some areas, but very much still about Shedeur in the passing game, very much about Travis Hunter and the rest of the wide receivers. Where do you feel like Colorado's maybe noticeably better, or what stands out to you about being different from last year's team from what you've seen so far?
I don't know that they're much different than they were last year. I really don't. I think they've probably got a little more depth up and down the board, both offensively and defensively. They've had two guys out in the secondary, and they're doing just fine at the safety spots. And so I think they're a very similar team to what they were last year. They're winning in the same way. They're never going to be a team that really tries to hurt you with the run. I think that they're going to throw it at you. And I'd say differently. Defensively, they're a little bit different. I think that, in fact, Baylor and Colorado are very, very similar defensively as I watch them. So, but I say they're very much the same team. They really do. They have a lot of skill and a lot of speed at the receiver spot. Running backs, we don't know a whole lot about, but it's a whole new room. And then the offensive line is a tad better than it was a year ago. And, I think it's young. And so as a result, it'll get better. Last year's line wasn't going to get any better, but this one's young. And I think as each game goes along, it'll get a little better.
Can you protect your quarterback if you cannot run the ball?
Well, that's always an issue for us. And as an old coach, no, you can't. It's really hard. And so that was our dilemma last year. So far, it's shown up to be our dilemma this year. Now, CSU tried to put pressure on us, but we held up pretty doggone well. Let me tell you what, Shedeur Sanders is a really good quarterback. He can throw the rock. He doesn't get rattled. He handles pressure really well because he's seen a lot of it. And I don't know whether you like him or you don't like him, but the doggone guy can play football.
Gary Barnett, former Colorado Northwestern football coach, Colorado Radio with us on 365 Sports.
On Shedeur, I mean, clearly he's very outspoken. He's very brash. He's got that. I mean, he's got a lot of his dad in him when it comes to that. But does he have maybe a little bit of growing up to do just to maybe deal with some of the things that come with being not only a quarterback but a celebrity quarterback now?
Well, he's a product of his environment, and the apple didn't fall very far from the tree. And so, we all have things to learn, and he certainly isn't a finished product yet, but he's a good quarterback, I can tell you that. And he doesn't always do the things you and I might want him to do, but I think he's well respected by his teammates, and he can spin the rock, that's for sure.
Coach, I know that Baylor doesn't roll in as like the hottest team in the world by any stretch, but they've had their fair share of success over the last decade plus. Just what's do you think going to be like the atmosphere for a Big 12 conference game in Boulder, the first time in a long time? And is there any thought about Baylor really in terms of this matchup?
I don't know because the generation of people watching this game didn't grow up with Baylor being around. So it'll be different, but it doesn't make any difference. Any game that we have right now, it's going to be sold out. It's going to be rocking. There's going to be movie stars, rock stars, rap stars. There's going to be everybody on the sideline and at the game, and it'll be a show. It really will be, and it has been since day one. And whether we were winning or losing or first game or last game, it's a crazy environment now, unlike any I ever was a part of. Even when we were winning a national championship, we didn't have this kind of atmosphere. So I think last year the best example was it was Nebraska, and it was our first home game, and I talked to people out there that didn't even know if the ball had air or paper. They'd come to see who was coming to the game. So you're going to have that faction. You're going to have a 1,000 or so people are there just to see who's there, but and they'll be there the whole time. Student body will be great, so it'll be a hard atmosphere to play in.
Gary, Baylor beat Air Force. It was 3 turnovers in the first half. Otherwise, they were moving the ball. The defense has played better, but obviously Colorado's offense is going to test that in every way with what they can do, especially with the passing game. Baylor went to a different quarterback because DeQuan Finn was out and had a sling on his right arm. Sawyer Robertson managed the game pretty well. Played a little bit last year, but they weren't very good at all. How would you handle this as a coach when you have a player who comes in, they look pretty good, they look really good in the second half, and yet we were told today by Dave Aranda that DeQuan Finn was back and practicing today?
Well, I think you have a starting quarterback for a reason. He won the job for a reason, and the only way you can lose a job is with an injury. I think that's pretty common among coaches. I don't know that your sample is big enough right now to be able to change your quarterback. I think two more games into it, 3 more games into it, and you're struggling, and the other guy's playing pretty well. Then I think you got a sample size that probably can justify making a change. But I think it's really hard to make a change. It speaks to your team a lot too. Now, there's 2 things. It shows your loyalty, but it also your team can say, well, maybe he's not the best player. Aren't you going to give us the best player? But I think Dave David's going to be loyal to his guys, and the guy won the job, and there's got to be a reason he won the job.
Gary Barnett with us, 365 Sports. Baylor and Colorado and Boulder on Saturday night.
So is that one of the more difficult things you have to do when, a team could really like a quarterback personally, and they could really support him, and he could be a good guy, but if he's struggling and they start to lose faith and it's maybe kind of in the back of their heads, is that the hardest trigger to pull maybe in coaching?
Well, I think it's really hard because it's the quarterback. And I had a very similar situation in 2001. And, our starter for 3 or 4 games gets hurt. And then we put the backup in and first game, and we lose Texas. And then the starter still can't play. And then all of a sudden we catch fire with this guy, and he's playing really well. And the other kid was the captain. And so I had to make a decision when we got down to the bowl game because he finally got back. And I said, I'm playing the guy that got us here. I'm going to do that. And, of course, it upset the captain and some of the players. But most of the players realized by then that this kid had led us to the Big 12 championship game, or was about to. So, that's a tough deal. But you say, he wins the job for a reason. And you can't just lose it on one game. Now, you can lose it on 3 or 4, but I don't think you can lose it on one game.
How many times did a decision you make, and you have to make dozens of them, I mean, not only in game, but throughout each week of each season, how many times as a coach did you make a decision that kept you up at night, if at all?
Well, you try to take as much time with making that decision as you can so that it doesn't cost you sleep, and that you're so thorough with what you're going to do, because your players are watching you really closely. And if you're making just off the cuff decisions right and left, they're going to view you in that way. And for me, I don't know if I've made one that kept me up at night too often. It's just part of the job. You're making decisions, like you said, you're making decisions all the time. But I always was upfront with my players and my coaches about it. And, I don't know if there's any I can look back on and say, man, that was a really bad decision. Maybe in recruiting, but not in the game.
Well, I mean, there's so many moving parts. People who want to think they can coach or want to coach, they have no clue what really all that you have to juggle. Just like, I got to say this, for those who watch a radio or TV show and don't understand some of the things that are going on at the one time, it's always something different. I'm not trying to compare the pressure, but unless you're in the business, you don't understand, quite frankly, what comes with it. So, Gary, what was the one thing you see, or the Deion year 1 with Colorado compared to year 2, and there's only been 3 games, that you see he might be doing better?
I think he's more aware now of how good everybody is that they're about to play. I think last year he just thought that perhaps the talent that they had in the perimeter would just win, because he's a skill guy.
Mm-hmm.
He never got down and put his hand on the ground and blocked a 3 technique, or had to go around the nose guard. And he was a sensational skilled athlete. And I don't know that he had a total appreciation for what goes on inside. And I think that's down in the trenches. And I think that's where he really tried to make this team better, both sides of the ball. And so I would say that appreciation for, 1, how good everybody is that you're going to play. And then 2, how important those big guys are at this level, because they could get away with it at Jackson State, but you can't get away with it here.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate your time. Always respect what you've done. Gary Barnett won that Big 12 title back in 2001 with that win against Texas after bludgeoning Nebraska in a game that ended the regular season.